you are in the search for happiness and peace and are on a spiritual journey yourself, you may have heard of two parallel teachings. So, one is from the Eastern religions that you may have heard is that desires are the root cause of suffering. We gotta eliminate our desires if we want to experience nirvana, if we want to experience happiness. And on the Western spiritual teachings, like law of attraction teachings, you may have heard that your desires are important. You gotta follow your desires, you gotta manifest your desires, and that you can attract your desires, receive your desires, and manifest your desires, right? So if you are on the spiritual path, it is easy to wonder then how can they both of them be true at the same time? How can we also be happy and be fulfilled, but also receive desires, manifest desires? How can you, like in this day and age when you still have desires, when you still have work, or you still have create things that you want to create in your life, you want to experience life, like make life magical. How can you do that while also being happy, like being liberated from suffering? So you may be wondering that, and I know that because I for a long time that is like what I was caught in, this tension of the two, and trying to figure that out was a big journey in myself. So in this podcast, I want to share with you how you can be full, feel fulfilled, how you can live life fully, like truly bask in this life, in this present moment. How can you be connected to this present moment while also having desires in your heart? When you have desires, how can you go through your life in a way where you're not being burdened by your desires, but instead you are even more excited about life? So I want to share this with you in this podcast episode. So if you are new to this podcast, welcome. If you are also watching it on video, welcome. My name is Chanmye, and I am a spiritual psychic life coach for heart-centered women, heart-centered entrepreneurs. And in this podcast, I want to talk about this navigating this part of having desires while also being happy. Even if your desires, like even if not all your desires have come true, how can you still hold that fullness, that abundance in you? And so first off, we do want to acknowledge the fact that both of these spiritual teachings are true, because on one hand, when you if you are someone who just started your spiritual awakening and you want to know more about who you are, having your desires is actually one of the fastest way to actually discovering how capable you are, how powerful you are, limitless you are, and that the universe, and also discovering more about the universe, that universe is this infinite space of creation is happening every moment. And like law of attraction teachings, they are absolutely valid. While on the other hand, it's also good to acknowledge that the fact that yes, it's also true when Buddhists say that desires, especially like attachments, are the root of suffering, because once you have more, and once you start achieving all those goals and receiving all those desires, you will come to realize that yes, these desires, there's this excitement, there's this build up, but once you actually achieve them, receive them, that happiness can be there, but it's very fleeting. You will still continue to desire the next thing and the next thing, and it never ends. As long as we are in this phase of the soul, as long as the soul is seeking more and more desires, like this cycle of searching will never end. And the truth is that your all the happiness and the peace, nothing outside can give that to us. Like nothing outside can give what we don't have. And you will come to this realization. So first is to acknowledge that yes, both of these are present, both of these are true. So then, how do we do this as conscious women? How do we still be happy while being on the path of your desires? And so I want to give with you some thought prompts to actually deepen down into that feeling space of knowing that happiness is possible while still having the desire. So number one, that the first thing that I want to share with you is to understand why the desires cause suffering. And what I have come to understand is that there are different types of desires, right? There are these, for example, creative desires, there are food desire. These are more physiological desires. There are more something like monetary desires. There are so many different types of desires. And in those two different types, we can see that even in desires, there are the desires of the mind and there are the desires of the heart. And I'm not saying that any of them is wrong. As mentioned earlier, your desires are the spiritual fuel. They fuel you. But what I've come to understand from my own experience is that when the desires are especially rooted from the mind, especially ego space, they create more suffering, while the desires from the heart can actually allow you to receive even more suffering. So the desires from the egos are actually the desires that are actually not true to us. They are not true to our essence, and we just got programmed during our lifetimes. For most of them, we got programmed during our lifetimes that we need them, even though deep down we don't want them. We're caught up into believing that we need to achieve this, we need to manifest this in order to be happy and fulfilled, and they are not true or authentic to us. So let's say, for example, from my own personal journey and experience, I used to think that my desire was to fly on a private jet and have several different mansions and etc. And I was on the path of trying to pursue that, and somehow on that path somehow came to this realization that this path feels really grueling. It did not feel right to me. It did not feel fulfilling to me, and I wondered why. And one of the biggest realizations that I learned was because even the initial desires, that the motivation for me to get there was not actually true to me. It came from actually the ego space. So how do you know if it's the ego? The ego space is more I need to prove this to the world. I need to prove that I can be this. I need to show it to other. I need to create a facade, create an image for myself. And a lot of the times for the desires that are from the head or the ego space, they are associated with painting a picture. You need to somehow achieve this picture, achieve this identity in order to be happy and fulfilled. You have to somehow grab this status, and the ego craves for recognition from people. The ego craves from especially like recognition, validation from people, and that is what keeps the ego, like the fuel going. But you will know that as you pursue more and more, like that type of motivation actually doesn't last long. Like that is actually not sustainable for you to actually keep on going and keep on doing what you do. Like the on the path, it will the fuel will actually burn out, die out. And that's why like people feel this overwhelm and burnout, and they don't know what they actually want anymore, right? Those are because at one point, we feel that we need to achieve those desires when it is actually not coming from a deeper space of knowing of who you are. And comparison of that ego desire, let's compare that to something more of like a soul desire that I have. So for instance, my desire to be free and doing whatever I want throughout my days, and having this time freedom, having this location freedom, and getting to experience nature. Like I feel like this is more of a desire. Like I'm not doing it because I need to prove it to the world that I can have this. Like I'm not wanting this because I want people to think of me in a certain way. Instead, I am just wanting to experience this for me. I want to experience because of the joy, because of the fun of the experience in itself. And that is how, my love, you know that this desire is true to you. And I actually even wrote a blog recently about it on creativemysticfairy.com, which is my website, and you can see like true true desires versus false desires, and how to actually know what makes you happy. So that's the first thing to know, is that sufferings will be worse, especially if your desires are not true to you. So you will find more suffering, like you will see more things to be stressed about, to be worried about, especially if the desires are not true to you. They are false desires, ego desires. And of course, there's nothing wrong with pursuing those desires, but we will, at one point, life will show us that our desires are actually not coming from this authentic space. And we know that because like we get into the feeling like we have to effort and push through life so much, and it's just getting exhausting. And that's how you'll start to wonder, like, what do you actually want? And my love, when you are asking those questions, these are actually really good, because you're tapping into your true self, your heart, asking what it is that you actually want. And that is why when you are receiving your heart's desire, it feels full. When you are experiencing it, it feels full, because you're connected to this experience through your body, through your heart. But if you are simply craving a desire from the mind, it feels very limiting, because you get to this peak of really high happiness, and then like somehow it's gone. And that is why you may have heard phrases where people say things like, "Oh, your imagination is always better than the reality," right? People say that over and over again, like expecting something and imagining something is more fun than actually getting it. And you may have had this experience yourself. And my love, that happens when we are approaching our desires from the head. We're trying to achieve them from the head. But when we do that from the heart, we feel happy while still experiencing it. And on the path and the process itself, it's also fulfilling. And the second thing that I want to share is that when we are desiring, like especially with false desires that lead to more suffering, it's usually like a static image. Like we just want our reality to look like this one particular image. And this is actually really common, especially in the social media day and age where there's Instagram and Pinterest, and you feel like you need to have this image, You need to craft this image, this lifestyle. You need to look exactly like this, and only that in that static moment, like then you can be happy. But the truth is that true life, real life, it's not a static image. It's not just like one pretty moment. There is things that are happening. Like it's this 3D reality that's happening every moment. Something is changing. It is alive. It is breathing. And so when we are actually connected to our true desires and what we actually want, we come to this understanding that it is through, like, it's more about the experience that we are craving, this moment to moment experience instead of an image. And when we get caught up in this image type of desires, what also happens is that we start to pedestalize that desire. So we think that that big of a desire, like once you achieve this perfect image, like you're gonna finally be happy. And I know this because like at one point in my self-development journey, when I first started into fitness, and I really dreamed of having like washboard abs and like having lean legs, and etc. And that's how I got into like fitness and later spirit self-development. But either way, when I first was in that space, like I thought that, oh, if I could take this perfect selfie, like, oh my God, reality is just going to be like, everything's like perfect and happy, right? I thought that. And then finally got there, and it's like nothing else changed much. And the same thing we can do in any other areas of our life. It can be in a business sense. Like I know that like entrepreneurs, we can be like, oh, if I finally hit this $10,000 month or like $100,000 month, you're gonna finally, get it. It's gonna be perfect. It's gonna be like, yes, I made it on the other side. But then the truth is that life shows you like the mountain never stops. Like it always ends. It's always like this direction. It's always moving upward. And so what I realize is that if we are only fixated on this particular milestone, we are actually, as souls, we are actually bigger than any form of milestone. We are bigger than anything that we can achieve. So even if we think that, oh, if we finally achieve this, then that is it. Like life, we will feel like, then what's next? It's gonna feel empty, because no, like who you are cannot be limited by this desires, no matter how big they seem. It always seems to continue to expand more and more, because we are infinite beings, my love. So what helps instead is, rather than fixating on this one particular milestone, what I have helped to help me feel happy on the route to being there is, what I have seen is that instead of focusing on only these big desires, what helps is to see how we can break this desire. What is this desire available to us now? So for instance, if you are an artist, maybe your big desire is to like be this top 10 in the whole world, right? This title. But if we are only focused on that until we achieve them, we feel like something is bothering us until we get there. But what really helps is to know, like, okay, what can we do right now? How can we actually fulfill that desire right now? So that is the question I wanted to ask you, my love. How can you fulfill that desire right now? What is this small little desire that you can actually fulfill right now? So for example, if I want to have 10,000 monthly visitors on my blog website, And if I'm desiring that, if I'm only focused on that, I am not going to be satisfied. Like, even if I've written a blog post, I'm not going to be like, still a long way to go, right? It's easy to be upset about the journey. But instead, if I look at, okay, so what is the desire? How is the desire presenting to me today? So if I think of it as a small thing, like, okay, writing a blog about this particular topic, or making this many pins, like that. What if we break that big desire down into small little chunks? And in fact, it also makes it more enjoyable, because now you see that, like, right now you actually have the capability to receive the desire, to feel fulfilled right now. And you can actually do that through either doing the thing, or being the thing, embodying the thing right now, and it's not dependent on a future reality. And yeah, that's what I want to share you, is that your big desires is actually available right now. Like, right now you have, like, it's in your hands. You don't have to be paralyzed wondering how you're going to and figuring out how you're going to go there, because, like, every reality that we want to tap into, like, it's all available. Everything is presented to us. And something similar to that is what I want to share, is that reality is not like this static image, but it's constantly moving. It's somehow like, at one point in my relationship journey, for example, I used to be like, oh, I want to, like, finally be married, right? That was like such a goal in my head, and it feels like I need to get there. Like, I need to feel like I have finally, like, settled down with a man. Like, I used to feel that way, but I realized that like the relationship actually never changed. Like, it's always this ongoing thing. Like, there was never an actual point where it feels like, oh, this like this one peak moment. And in fact, it's not this peak moment, but rather small little currents moving on every single day. It is flowing, it is available. Life is like a running stream, like this film strip that is like streaming all the time. So, my love, what I want you to know is, like, to be like, okay, how can you receive this desire right now? Like, even if it's a small little thing, how can you receive it in this little small little moment? And the last thing I want to share with you is that when you are desiring, your desires are actually like a compass. They're actually your North Star, okay? They don't, just because, like, you haven't got to your destination doesn't mean that you can embrace what is happening right now. And I want you to think of an analogy, like you are on a ship. And on that ship, let's say you're traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, and you have this on a map, there is this destination journey, this little point that you want to travel to. So if you are traveling, would you be like, okay, I need to get to this destination, I need to, like, put all my blinders, I can't look at anywhere else, like, I can't actually enjoy being on this ship until I get to this space? Like, how would life feel? Like, it would be really torturesome if we are trying to travel it that way, right? The same thing in life. If we are only focused on the desire and thinking that, like, this destination is the only means to happiness, then we're gonna miss out so much of our lives. Only in our deathbed we'll be like, oh, what did I actually, like, what is life? Like, what actually happened? You didn't actually get to connect to people as much, experience life as connect to yourself as much. And so what I want you to know is that your desires are like a compass on your map. And just because there is this compass and there is this indicator showing you where it is that you want to head into, doesn't mean that you have to shut all your windows and you can't look at the beautiful views, like, around you. right? Instead of a ship, like if it's a ship, all you see is the ocean, but you can think of any other like traveling a medium, like could be like a van or something, right? It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the view. And in fact, we came here on planet Earth to enjoy the view. It was the view. The view was the main thing. Like it's the view is so precious because the view is moving every moment. Like we won't have the same view for another moment again. Like you won't have another day like this, what you have today again. So every single second, it is renewing all the time. And that was the point of what we actually came here for. And I saw that when I kind of looked back at my childhood too, and you can look back at yours as well. And I realized that when I was young, I grew up in a really like a poverty state, especially in a developing country. My parents were not that extremely rich, and so I always felt like I lived in kind of a rural area in Myanmar, south in a developing country, and so I always felt like, oh, until I live in the city, I want to grow up so fast. I want to live in a city. I want to do this, do that, right? I have all these desires and they were always in my head. And now I look back and realize like I didn't get to fully enjoy the time that I could have had. Like with my dad, for example, he's not here anymore in this physical reality. And I saw it and I was like, yeah, like sometimes you can be so caught up in your desires that, yes, I was such an ambitious kid too, and I worked so hard. But even then, like when you are in that, you just miss out on the the most precious thing we start to miss out on if we are only thinking that we need to get to the destination in order to be happy, in order to live life to the fullest. So, my love, the last question that I want to ask you is what do you have right now that in the future is not guaranteed that you would have? Because really, we can't guarantee anything. Like, even the trees around me, they can be sucked up by a tornado any moment, right? Everything can change. Like think of all the possibilities. Reality comes with both creation as well as destruction. So when we are wanting to create this new reality, it also means that some of the things need to be destroyed, right? They go hand in hand. Creation and destruction is part of the cycle. So if you're wanting to create something, something has to let go. And know that yes, even in this moment, there are things that are available to you right now that may not be available in the future. So, can we fully bring your soul, bring your life force to that and fully embrace it? And I don't just mean like, oh, enjoying my life, like just, watching the birds, but really put my attention, put my thought, put my full self into this. So maybe that might look more engaged, like being more engaged with reality. So instead of just like thinking about my day, rather than that, can we really open up to what's here? So like instead of just watching the birds, even, I mean, watching the birds is still a huge step away from just being caught up in our head. But even instead of it, like, can we even be more involved? Like maybe write a poem about it, right? Like channel this little bird, right? Psychic channeling or things like that. Like, how can you be more engaged with life? Because truly life is interacting with us with at every moment, even in the little things that we wouldn't have recognized otherwise. So that is what I want to share with you today on how you can be happy, how you can be fulfilled right now. Instead of waiting for a desire to happen, you can actually live life to the fullest right now. So that is what I want to share with you, my love, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.